Mike Tomlin's Week 13 press conference leading up to our game versus the Buffalo Bills. Some information on injuries we'll have. Just into the lead up, they were saying the Bills are like number 1 against the pass, but like number 30 against the run. And is that inflated because teams are running and then therefore they don't need to pass? And I thought about something, right? And I heard this. And the Bills, in their last 7 games, have lost 4. 4 out of their last 7 they've lost. And if you think about it, the Steelers at one point were 4-1, and now they're 6-5, which means they have gone 2-4 in that span. So that's losing 4 out of their last 6. But if you go back before that, they were 3-1. So they have gone 3-4 in their last 7, just like the Buffalo Bills. And why do people still give the Bills the benefit of the doubt? Because they have a franchise quarterback in Josh Allen, and they've been a Super Bowl contender for the past few years. But even though they have all of that, they still have the same record as the Steelers in their last 7 games. Just putting that out there. And also, if they're 30th against the run, and Aaron's still his wrist, just have this be a heavy run game. Take Jalen, take Kenneth, even if you need to take Caleb, and say, go. Let's see what happens.
Good afternoon. As always, I'll start with a quick preview of our last performance. As I mentioned after the game, certainly a tough game and close game, and oftentimes when it's good on good, man, it comes down to a handful of potential plays. But how do you identify those plays as the singular significant ones? Really, from a leader's perspective, you don't. You put a bunch of irons in the fire. You understand that any of those plays in any of those areas can be the significant difference. And I thought there were some specific areas in all 3 phases of the game that contributed to us to not winning the game. On special teams, as I mentioned after the game, I got to give a lot of credit to their kicker. In the kickoff game, he delivered some challenging, dirty balls in the kickoff game, balls that land just barely inside the landing zone and bounce around that are difficult to feel in advance. That's the new hang time and the new dynamic kickoff. And so as soon as that ball hits the ground, people can start covering. I thought it, certainly challenged us from a field positioning standpoint. I think his first 3 were really, really successful in that space. And I thought in the latter part of the game, man, we needed better timely punting, particularly in the waning moments of the game. I think our last punt was 33 yards, and certainly been pleased with Corliss's body of work over the greater portion of the season, but we needed a little bit more last Sunday, and so I'm excited about him bouncing back from that as we lead in on this week's opportunity. On offense, we talked about a couple specific things. They were number 2 in the league in third downs, and so we talked about we had to be in very manageable third downs. I thought we were successful in doing so. I thought we ran the ball effectively. And I think that gave us like 7 third down and 3 or less scenarios. We converted 6 of those. And I just think that's the first way that you negate a unit that has dynamic schematics and players in that space. We stayed at less than 3rd and 5, didn't allow them to get to a lot of their schematics, turning the tables in our favor. And to be quite honest with you, that's something that we've excelled at this year. 3rd down and 2 or less, we got to be one of the top units in football in terms of those conversions. And so oftentimes the things that lead up to possession down play really determines how it unfolds, and I thought we did a really good job there. We also talked about their defense thriving in the takeaway game. They had 22 or so going into the game. They were tops in football. We were certainly less successful there.
We were number 2.
And it was really impactful in terms of how the game unfolded. We turned the ball over at midfield there early. and they were able to get 7.
Yep.
And then in the early portions of the second half or in the third quarter, we got sack, fumble, put them on the short field again,
Yep.
and they were able to turn that also into a touchdown. And really, when you peel it all back, I think their ability to turn our turnovers into touchdowns and our inability to do so on the other side was really the difference in the game. Obviously, we had one takeaway on defense that resulted in a touchdown, and man, that's been awesome. I think we got 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks defensively. That's a good sign as the road gets narrow. But the other turnover we got there at midfield, Y.A. Black, in a short yardage circumstance, we lost that possession on a turnover on downs in the subsequent drive. And so, you know, when it's good on good, that minutia is often the difference. As I mentioned, we were able to take the ball away from them, and that's something that they excelled at on offense. I think they had 6 turnovers over the course of the season. We got 2 big ones, but we also had an opportunity at some other ones that didn't come to fruition.
Duggar.
We had a turnover right before the half get taken away because we were offsides, and if you remember, they settled for a field goal on that drive, and the outcome of the game was 3 points. And so these and some of the things that I previously mentioned is what I mean when I talk about there's often a lot of irons in the fire in terms of how games unfold, how you engineer victory. And that's why we talk about all 3 phases, putting together comprehensive plans and coordinating those efforts in the effort to find that type of synergy, that type of complementary football that allows those things to happen. From an injury standpoint, man, we got a couple things to talk about. Broderick Jones has a neck injury. He'll be classified as out this week. I'll have more information for you the next time we get together, but certainly he'll be classified as out this week. Same thing goes for Derek Harmon. He sustained a knee injury in play, was able to finish the game, but he'll be characterized as out this week. Optimistic about a couple returns. Aaron obviously, man, worked his tail off to get to us last week, but as I mentioned, over the course of the weekend, it was a prudent and appropriate decision. We'll start this week with great optimism, although we certainly will limit him at the early portions of the week, provide opportunities for the other quarterbacks while preserving him. But again, we're comfortable with the general trajectory, but I'll keep you updated, and his level of participation and the quality of his participation over the course of the week will be the greatest indicator. Same thing could be said for Alex Highsmith. He's been out the last couple of weeks, but we're optimistic as we start the week about his inclusion this week. A couple of guys that are managing some in-game things from last week that may be limited at the early portions of the week, and we'll see where their participation leads. Joey Porter with a hip. DK Metcalf got his ankle rolled, but he was able to finish. But again, certainly will probably limit him at the early portions of the week. And the same thing for Ben Skoranek with a shoulder. Now on to Buffalo. Man, really excited about this AFC matchup at Acrisure Stadium. Man, things are tight in the AFC. They're certainly a viable group. It's a big ball weekend here in Pittsburgh. And so I'll start first with their offense. Josh Allen, man, what a competitor. You know, we talk a lot about his talents, his legs, his arms, and things of that nature. But it's the intangible quality that really captures your attention as you study tape. His ability to rise up in the moment, his will, his competitive spirit, how he finishes plays, whether it's scramble plays to keep passes alive or, you know, when he chooses to pull the ball down and run. You got to be really conscious of what you do schematically in terms of how you rush him and how you support that rush with the coverage behind it. Because, again, his ability to extend plays without negativity, his ability to break you down with his legs, certainly we've seen over the course of this season, and certainly we've seen firsthand over the course of his career some of the games that we've been in against him. Man, they're running the ball extremely well. Certainly he's a component of that. But, man, Cook is doing an awesome job. He's almost got 1,100 yards. I think he's number 2 in the league in rushing. He averages 5.4 per carry. He's got 8 touchdowns. He's a bell cow for him and really has been for a number of years now. I think he just got a big contract at the start of the season, and he and they are certainly reaping the rewards of that. he's got an awesome fullback. You know, we don't often mention
Reggie.
the fullback in today's game, but Reggie Gilliam out of Toledo, man, has been there, I think, since 2020. He's playing really good football for them. Is a major component of what they do in the running game. Oftentimes, statistics don't bear that out, but guys like he and 85 Halls, man, are significant contributors to the number 2 rushing attack in football. In terms of the passing game, Josh has certainly got a lot of eligibles to throw the ball to, receivers and tight ends. He distributes the ball to open people. The depth of their group is a challenge. They spread the ball around, they formation you. He works the interior portions of the field very well. Certainly, that's been an area that's had our attention over the last several weeks. Man, we've given some things up there. They got talented tight ends in Kincaid and Knox that are capable of working that portion of the field. They got solid receivers outside. Can't say enough about their slot receiver, his ability to win one-on-one matchups and break people down. He can turn short to long. They throw bubble screens and things of that nature. Jets, man, they got some people that can take minimal risk schematic endeavors, man, and turn them into big plays. And so, as I mentioned earlier when I was talking about Josh, man, they're a great possession down group. We got to have a heck of a third down plan. We got to work to get off the field and get them off the field. But his talents are a major component of that. And so we got a lot of things to face on that side of the ball. On defense, they're a continuity group. You know, boy, they've had a collection of people there for some time, and even some of them are doubling back for a second stint. You know, Tre'Davious White and Poyer, for example, are two guys that spent a lot of time there that have gone on the other places and doubled back. I think they value that continuity. It allows them to do a lot of things schematically, particularly in the secondary. I think they're number 1 in the league in terms of passing yards per game, and it speaks to that continuity. That collective, man, a lot of their talent is homegrown, drafted there, and spent a lot of time there. Can't say enough about their safety 2-4, man, out of Utah, man. He's doing a lot of really good things and contributing in a variety of ways. He may be their leading tackler. I think he's got 3 sacks. He's also got 3 interceptions. He's a good pressure man on first and second down in an effort to minimize your running game. He's a good pressure man on third down as well. You know, it starts up front for them. They've always been a 4-down group, and they've always allocated a lot of resources there. It seems every year they're acquiring some really established rusher to round out their depth in that space. It's been, you know, Leonard Floyd over the years. It's been Von Miller. This year, obviously, is Bosa. And they certainly already have enough talent in that space. But I think it just speaks to their commitment to fortifying their talent and depth up front. They play behind their rush. Those guys wreak havoc. They do. They're challenging in the C and D gap area in the run game because oftentimes those guys are a lot bigger than the tight ends and so forth that generally play in that space. That's one of the reasons why we deploy some of the schematics that we deploy out in that C and D gap area with Darnell Washington and Spencer Anderson, for example, because guys like Russo are just, you know, oftentimes too big and long to block in the running game for quote-unquote normal tight ends. And so, man, we got a lot to be excited about. We got a lot, obviously, from a challenge perspective. It's a big ball weekend. We show our respect to that with how we prepare. We're doing so right now as a staff, and looking forward to continuing that with the players tomorrow as we lean in on prep. I'll pause and open it up for questions.
Mike, was one extra week or a week off enough to alleviate any concerns/fears you might have had about Aaron with his wrist?
I think time will tell. There were so many unknowns last week because it just is lack of work during the course of the week. I think that there'll be less unknowns regarding that topic, and that's what makes this week an encouraging one, and that's why we're hopeful.
The determining factor there, safety for him, was that the determining factor in pulling him out?
It was just the appropriate thing to do from our perspective.
How much physical work does Aaron need to get to be able to play on Sunday?
Again, you know, what he needs and what others might need are certainly different topics of conversation, but we don't focus on bare minimum in terms of what he needs. Our goal is to, you know, proceed with caution appropriately while at the same time giving him all the work that we can afford to give him. And so we're just certainly going to live that day by day. He clocks in and visit with Gabe and the training staff every morning, and we kind of build a plan from there.
You need to see, excuse me, you need to see him take more snaps under center to test that wrist.
Again, we'll see where the week leads us.
Mike, with Derek Harmon, is this the same injury that he dealt with in the preseason, or is it
No, it was something that happened in game last Sunday.
Was it the same knee or the other knee?
To be honest with you, I'm not even certain. He was able to finish the game, and so it wasn't on my radar when I visited with you guys post-game, but it certainly turned up on Monday morning, and that's why I just wanted to be transparent with you.
How do you feel about your depth there, specifically with YA and how he's grown?
Really encouraged by his growth, man, and I think his play time is kind of reflective of that. But we like our young D linemen, and we've acquired a new one in Broderick, and so sometimes
Yeah,
guys get
the
an
kid from
opportunity. One
Kansas
man's
City.
misfortune is another man or another men's opportunity, and so we're encouraged by the depth that we have at that position. We'll take the collective through the week. We can see who can execute detail, and I'm sure it'll be more than one person. It often is when we're talking about losing somebody that's starter caliber.
Like, how do you balance maybe the competitive nature of a guy like Aaron, who obviously really wants to be out there and play, versus what you feel is right in terms of safety and just the long-term benefit for the team?
I think first and foremost, you lean on the advice of the medical experts. I'm not going to take his competitive spirit and his will to compete as a negative. Those are positives. But certainly, it's our job as leaders to exercise appropriate precaution, and first and foremost for me are the opinions of the medical staff.
Look back at it, where do you think you guys could have been better in your red zone defense against Chicago?
There are a couple calls you'd like to have back, certainly. There's some detail that you'd like to have back, but oftentimes that's just the case. It's not, one glaring thing. It's popcorn. It's minutia here, minutia there. Man, we'd like to be in a different call under this circumstance. We'd like to have someone better positioned in that
Hindsight's
circumstance.
20/20.
I think that's kind of reflective of the red zone output last week.
11 games, big picture, offense or defense. Do you find that you are dealing most often with those popcorn elements, or do you find that you are coaching around or still trying to coach better shortcomings?
It depends on the circumstance, and what I mean by the circumstance is oftentimes who you compete against, the nature of that matchup, their schematics is a component of that discussion, player availability within the 11 weeks, who's available, who's not available, and how that might impact your strategy. And so, it's difficult to paint with a broad brush, but I'll say largely, generally it's a combination of all of the above.
As you look for the chunk plays offensively, are there more opportunities in the middle of the field that you feel like you need to exploit?
Maybe. Again, it's week to week, depending on the schematics that the team or the teams that we compete against choose to deploy. But certainly, largely, if you look at the large body of work, there's probably some more opportunities for us in the interior portions of the field.
Like, how did Calvin Anderson perform when he had to go in there, and who's going to be your swing tackle this week?
Feel really comfortable with what Calvin has given us. He's been that guy that's a swing tackle for us, and he's shown really good capabilities in that area, but we're also extremely comfortable with Pete, and that's one of the reasons why we acquired Pete, in the team development process. There's a guy that has a resume that started wire to wire, that came into this league as a first rounder, and so certainly he has a different profile than Calvin. We like both guys. Both guys are veteran professionals who have a certain level of preparedness and maturity that they bring to the work every day. And so we're going to prepare both guys, and we'll have more clarity as we get closer to game time.
Why has consistency been so elusive, particularly on defense?
It always is. I think oftentimes your record reflects that. If we were sitting here at 9-2, we'd probably be having less of the discussion. At 6-5, I think 6-5 in general speaks to that.
Mike, the Bears got a bunch of their chunk plays against you guys in cover 3 zone defense. It seemed like you guys were leaning away from that in the recent weeks where you guys were finding more defensive success. Did you view that as maybe a schematic error in the alignment, or more of an execution error that you guys need to be better in those moments?
Sometimes it's just decisions that you make in an effort to fortify the matchup. As I mentioned, not only at the beginning of this, but at the beginning of last week, we were playing the number 2 rushing team in football. And so, man, that that requires a certain deployment of schematics. And oftentimes the play action pass is a negative byproduct of that. I thought they executed their play action passing game with more fluidity and more consistently than they had leading up to our game. And so I got to give them credit for their planning and execution in that space.
In the situation of the 25-yard more touchdown we ran up the seam against you guys, it was trips right, 4 verticals. Is that a situation where you have to check out of the cover 3 zone?
I am not going to peel back the layers of how we function from a schematic standpoint, although I am impressed by the depth of your question.
Mason's been very successful converting third downs and extending some drives this last 6 quarters. Anything in particular that he's doing or why it's been so successful?
Mason? Yeah, I think we've made a conscious effort to be on schedule. And I think when you're on schedule, man, it provides you more options and more ways to skin the cat, if you will. The run game becomes a component of it. As I mentioned, we're one of the elite teams in third down and 2 or less. And as I mentioned in the last game, I think there were 7 instances where it was 3rd and 3 or less. And so that takes a lot of options and schematic options away from a defense and provides those for the offense.
What are teams doing to limit Jonnu, and what can you guys do to get him more opportunities?
You know, I don't know. I don't know if they're doing anything specifically. Sometimes it's just our planning. Certainly, Jonnu is a capable member of our unit, and you know, it usually comes around. A number of weeks back, you guys were asking me about Muth, and I gave you a similar response, so keep watching.
Do you have an outer limit in terms of yardage or a limit in terms of seconds remaining on the clock in your head before you rush on the field goal unit?
Yeah, I do, but, you know, where's the ball located and things of that nature is a component of it.
Why has it been a struggle to, generate plays vertically in the passing game?
You know, a lot of it's got to do with schemes that people deploy, but we also could be certainly better in that area. If you're speaking specifically to last Sunday, I thought the deep ball has always been an asset of Mason Rudolph's game, but it wasn't necessarily so last Sunday. We had some plays to be made down the grass that we didn't take advantage of. Second play of the game, he left the ball a little bit short versus DK. We had Roman down the grass and the ball sailed out of bounds, just as a couple of examples of that. And so, you know, we acknowledge that, and we'll go back to work and keep pressing.
Mike, Troy was uncovered late in the game. Is that on Mason to recognize that, or is that on the receivers to make sure they're lined up right?
You're talking about on the illegal formation? We own that as a collective. We didn't do a good enough job in that moment as a collective. It certainly was a significant play. Oftentimes you're defined by your ability to execute under those circumstances when time is of the essence, when you're working at pace. And those of you that watch us practice, that's why we spend so much time working on that component of the game week in and week out. We start our Wednesdays with offense versus defense, working at pace. We finish Wednesday's practice and Thursday's practice under the same umbrella because we realize that you need reps in an effort to be clean there because that was a significant component of the game. We fought our tails off and had a chance to have the ball and go back at them. We converted a 3rd down and 4. Mason did with his legs, went down the field, but certainly we were illegal there and we were deserving of that penalty.
On that final play, did you consider a field goal, and did getting the K ball in factor it in at all to the decision?
I didn't. I didn't feel comfortable with the distance there. I wanted to convert and clock it and play from there, but obviously the 4th down play got batted down at the line of scrimmage, and so the subsequent discussions became mute.
You made the decision about Aaron on Saturday of last week. Do you anticipate a similar timeline for his availability this week?
I have no idea. Stay tuned.
You talked about how tight it was in the AFC. Does it feel like the playoffs start now for your group?
I always feel that way. I just been in this league so long, man. We don't have an 80-plus game schedule or 160-plus game schedule. You get 17 opportunities to state a case for yourself. And so there's extreme urgency in our business. And those of us that have been in it for a long time, players and coaches, we understand that.
Challenge for you guys as a staff, preparing a team offensively when you throw more to the middle of the field when you have Aaron versus not as much when you don't, as far as getting that chemistry going during the week and you don't know who exactly will start?
There's always challenges when you're missing significant players.
To Jeff's question, part of the reason you were in that time crunch is that rule that exists that even though the clock is stopped, it burns a timeout. During your time with the competition committee or what have you ever been given a rationale as to why it's found to be necessary?
I'm sure I've been a component of that, but the details of it doesn't come to mind as I stand here today.
I do think
it's
that's
certainly
dumb.
a more obscure rule, and certainly from a spirit perspective with the clock being stopped, it's a reasonable question, but I'm just not really familiar with the discussions that we've had along those lines as I stand here right now.
How do you plan on using your corners with Slade? Can Slade potentially be back in the starting mix, or is Pierre?
We feel really comfortable with his availability this week. We'll make that determination as we get closer to game time and really look at some of the schematic things that we're dealing with. Certainly Joey being limited at the top part of the week could be a component of that discussion as well.
Does that potentially open the door for Asante Samuel Jr. to get some looks with you guys this week?
We're always, open to our practice squad guys elevating, particularly those with the resume like Samuels. And so he's only been here a short period of time. He's been working his tail off to not only get in football conditioning, but learn what to do. And it's been a good endeavor thus far, but it's too early in the week for me to speculate in that regard.
You feel like your offensive line, especially the young guys, have found the most collective success as a group, whether it's run blocking in certain situations or pass protecting in others?
I just think in general they've been on the upswing. The arrow's pointed up on that collective, as a collective and as individuals, and so I'm encouraged by it. But I say that weekly, and oftentimes the statistics don't bear that out. But that's just how games unfold. I love the fact that they're largely playing penalty-free, to be honest with you. We don't talk about that enough. I think as a collective, they've been penalized maybe 8 times this season. And so with a young group playing as penalty-free as they are, I'd be wrong if I didn't mention that as a component of their growth and development as well.
Anyone else? Mike, earlier today, Heinz Ward was named a semifinalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. What would be your pitch to the committee to try and get him into the Hall?
Hey, numbers do not tell his story, although his numbers are special. They are. I think that's a guy with 1,000 or so career catches.
Exactly 1,000.
But man, if you were around him, if you were in stadiums with him, if you were a member of his team or an opposing player, you understood what playing with and against Heinz Ward was about. He was a football player first, a wide receiver second. To be quite honest with you, he was an offensive perimeter bully, and I say that in a complimentary way. To me, he's a legendary player in his generation because of the way that he played, the amount of respect that he carried when he didn't have the ball in his hands, when it wasn't even a pass, is stuff of legend.
An example you still use today with guys?
Without question. Without question.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, so not too bad on notes for this one. So kickoff strategy versus Bears. And by all that, I mean is that, the Bears were, as Tomlin said, were dirty kicking it, which basically, not that it was dirty or illegal, but it was in the dirt, I think is what he means by that. Bad day of punting. And I have mentioned the confusion penalty. So, not Corliss Waitman's best day. But also, we had a punt where Corliss punts it, and it's a decent punt. And then there's a penalty. Ref says holding on the receiving team, and it backs them up, right? It was going to be like half the distance, and they were probably going to be at like the 6 or something. They were going to be way deep in their own territory. Cut to commercial. Cut back, and all of a sudden it's, hey, by the way, penalty Pittsburgh for holding, and they have to repunt. It's like, whoa, what happened? And essentially what happened is that when the refs huddled up to be like, okay, what's the penalty? And the guy says it's holding. Apparently the guy who relays that misunderstood the penalty. He thought it was holding Chicago when it was actually holding Pittsburgh, almost like Green Bay. So then when he says holding receiving team, and they cut to commercial, he's like, no, I didn't say it was holding on Chicago. I said it was holding on Pittsburgh. So then it's, okay, correction, Pittsburgh punts, and it's terrible. And it was like a 30-yard difference between the two punts, even though it's not a 30-yard penalty. He said we were in 3rd and 3 or less 7 times, and we converted 6 out of 7, which is actually pretty impressive. That's just being efficient, which, great, you're efficient, but bad, you're not getting the explosives. Turnovers were key in this loss here, where we turned the ball over, and yeah, Chicago turned it over as well, but there were other opportunities that we had to get a turnover and did not. The offsides he mentioned, Duggar, he had it. He did. And much like the first time against Cincy, it just right off of him. As far as injuries are concerned, Broderick's out, Harmon's out. Aaron, he's probably a maybe, as we sit here, to a probably, somewhere in that ballpark. They're optimistic on Alex. JPJ has a hip, DK an ankle, Ben Skowronek a shoulder. We'll see what happens with those guys. Let's say DK or JPJ can't go. Or hell, maybe if Ben Skowronek can't go. We'll see if we see either MVS or maybe Asante Samuel. This is a really important AFC game because Buffalo's contending for a playoff spot, right? Think about our losses this year. Who did we lose to? Seattle. NFC, but a good team. Right? We lost to the Packers, an NFC team. Again, still a good team. We lost to the Chicago Bears, an NFC team, but still a good team. We lost to the Chargers, who's a good AFC team. And it's kind of the problem, right? The problem with that is that it's going to hurt us when it comes down to the playoffs. They're a playoff contender, and if we're both vying for spots, they get the spot ahead of us because they beat us. That's the direct tiebreaker. So then you have what was our other loss? The Bengals. The Bengals was our other loss. Now that one, yes, it's an AFC loss, and it's a division loss, but they're probably not a playoff contender this year because of the injury to Joe Burrow. Now, granted, he's coming back, and he's going to play Thanksgiving night against Baltimore. And they kind of did the same thing Baltimore did when Lamar was coming back. Don't play him Sunday because you have to play Thursday. It's literally the exact same scenario. Instead of playing him Sunday, the quick turnaround to play Thursday, you just hold him out Sunday and then play him Thursday. So we'll see what happens with that. But, you know, your 5 losses are 3 NFC teams, which won't hurt you directly in the playoffs. The Chargers, which will, and the Bengals, which won't hurt you directly. Now, divisional record, conference record, all that. But Buffalo, they're one of those teams where you're like, oh shit, you know, we lose this game, and not only are we 6-6, but that's another AFC playoff team that we've lost to and would have the direct tiebreaker over us. 3 players I wrote down: Cole Bishop, James Cook, Josh Allen. Obviously, Josh Allen, the franchise quarterback. James Cook, the franchise running back who got paid. and he's been having a nice year. Cole Bishop, a lot of people may not know that name. He's one of the safeties, second-year player from Utah, and he has been playing alongside Jordan Poyer, but it's so weird that so I'm like an hour outside Buffalo, so I'm in the Buffalo Bills market. So when Poyer started playing, Cole Bishop started playing better, and he's been playing with his hair on fire the past few weeks. He's been playing really well, so he's going to be a name to watch for at the safety position. The Bills also tend to have a veteran rusher each year, whether it's Floyd, Von Miller, Joey Bosa, name it. They typically have a veteran rusher. And Harmon's knee injury is not related to the preseason injury. He didn't say if it was the same knee or not, but it's not related. Who's going to play left tackle? Is it going to be Anderson or is it going to be Pete? We'll leave us and Buffalo guessing. We played lots of single high versus Chicago. Versus, we were playing a lot of two high and we were doing better. Now we went back to the single high and we didn't do as good. So I think we're better off staying in two high. Because when you're in single high, right? Yeah, you could have someone drop back into a zone and that's your cover 2. Or you just play cover 1, but at that point, one safety is covering 53 1/3 yards from sideline to sideline. Then you could always drop into cover 3. If you're in 2, you can drop a guy and go to 1. You can have 2 guys go back and you're in cover 4. There's definitely possibilities, but I think we're doing a better job in 2 high instead of single high. I noticed that in this game, we did continue to run the ball in the second half. There have been times where we just go away from it for some reason or another, but not this game. We actually continued to run the ball. Along with why we're not having as many explosives, I do know that lots of teams are running the 2 high safety look versus us. So now they had the 2 high safeties. They keep everything in front. And that is preventing us a little bit from having the explosive plays. But also, we're just not trying. It's a little bit of both. If we saw more single high, maybe we would try more. I do think there is a correlation to that. Was it right to punt at the end of the game? And was it right to not kick the field goal? So obviously Tomlin says, well, only 24 seconds went off the clock. We had our 3 timeouts. We only ended up using 2, but then James Pierre got hurt, so we lost the 3rd. Which, yes, I do agree that's kind of a dumb rule there. That if the clock stopped but you have the injury, you still lose the timeout. I do hate that. I'm not a huge fan of that. So, and then the decision not to kick the field goal, obviously you got to try to get a kicking ball out there. It's 64 yards, this, that, the other. I talked about it in the other videos that from after the game. And then you have James Pierre versus Slay last week, even though we thought Slay was going to start. James Pierre did practice all week, whereas Slay, he was with his concussion and he was coming back. So they may have thought, you know what? Let's just play the fully healthy guy and give Pierre another week. And then that's it. That's all I have. So if you guys did enjoy this, please do leave a like. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, turn notifications on. I'll see all you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.